So let's start this discussion by looking at what histology is. Histology is the study of tissues. We study tissues to understand how cells actually work, but also it helps us to understand what happens in normal situations and what happens when a particular tissue is actually damaged. So that is why actually we look at histology. That means our discussion of histology is linked with, for example, the use of the microscope. We use microscopes to be able to visualize different tissues and also to be able to identify if the tissues that we are looking at are normal or abnormal. So a tissue is a group of similar cells that work together to perform a specific function. Okay, so that's the definition of what a tissue is. Okay, these cells do not work individually or independently. Cells work together, and when you have all these cells that are similar in terms of structure, then it means that in terms of structure, in terms of composition, in terms of shape, that means that they will be able to perform a similar function. So this part where we're talking about similar cells is to talk about the shape, the composition, the components of the cell or the cellular components in that cell, in those cells, and many other parameters. Okay, so that is the emphasis of structurally and functionally related. Okay, and these cells are supposed to be functionally and structurally related. That means that if they have the same structure, whether it is about the shape, whether it is about the different components that they have or organelles, they can be able to carry out the same function or the same task. So the tissues are composed of cells that are similar, and that means that these cells have to be connected to one another. This is basically to emphasize the fact that they should be linked. Okay, there should be a mechanism in which they can actually communicate. The cells themselves can communicate with one another, such that they can be able to perform the same function. It is just like saying that you have a group with different members, but if these different members cannot communicate, there's nothing that connects them, then it is not possible that they actually will work cohesively or collaboratively. So there's need to have that physical connection such that the cells can actually work together. Okay, the tissues may contain intercellular substances between the cells. This is partly what I've just explained, that there should be a physical linkage between the cells. This physical linkage is what we are calling intracellular substances, and some of these intracellular substances hold these cells together, but also help these cells in communicating to one another. Okay, you can have a tissue that has more than one type of cell. We look at, for example, the nervous tissue. We'll look at neurons, but we'll also look at things like the neuroglia, or Galio cells. These are different cells within the nervous tissue. Okay, so that is point number 3. And then the obvious point, which is that tissues perform a particular function, which we derive from the definition that we had earlier on. So tissues emerge from cells. Remember, at fertilization, you have a zygote that is being formed. So with the zygote, which undergoes multiple cell divisions until you have a fetus, and then a newborn at delivery, with the different tissues which are mature, and also systems that are actually mature. So there is that transformation, which we call embryonic development, from a zygote, which is basically formed by fusion of the male and female gamete, to a complex organism that has different systems working together to sustain life. So that is what we call embryonic development. So the tissues also emerge from cells. Okay, so that means that the cells undergo different embryological development processes to form these tissues. But primarily, most of the organs and the systems that an adult or a mature human being, or even an animal, that they have, they emerge from three primary germ layers, regardless of the organ that we are talking about, whether it is the heart, whether it is the pancreas, whether it is the liver, whether it is the bladder, kidneys, adrenal glands, whatever, even the skin, any organ that we talk about, or any tissue that we talk about, comes from at least any of the three germ layers that we have listed here. So the first germ layer is what you call the ectoderm. Ecto means outside. So it forms the outside layer of the skin. Okay. So what we are basically emphasizing here is that different organs emerge from different layers, or from these three different layers. And here we are emphasizing that the ectoderm is the one which gives us the outer layer of the skin. And it can also develop into the nervous system. It develops into the nervous system. And then we move to the second layer, which is the mesoderm. It gives us most of the systems and organs and tissues. It gives us the muscles, connective tissues, skeleton, circulatory system, reproductive system. Okay, and then the endoderm gives us the lining of the respiratory tract and the urinary bladder, and then the associated glands in the gut and the respiratory tract. So we have said that tissues are basically now a group of similar cells that perform a particular function, or a specific function. And we have noted that these cells are physically linked. Some of these cells are linked by what we call cell junctions, or junctions. Okay, these are proteins that connect one cell to another. Okay, so these cells help in holding. These tight junctions, or cell junctions, help in holding these cells together and allow them to function in a coordinated way, or as a coordinated unit. So in our discussion of animal tissues, we usually talk about four primary tissues. The epithelial tissue, which covers surfaces, body surfaces and cavities, and then the connective tissue that binds and supports other tissues, muscular tissue, which is responsible for movement, nervous tissue, which is responsible for conducting electrical impulses. Okay. Sometimes when you find discussions about reproductive tissue, but mainly we look at the four tissues that we have, the four primary types of tissues.